This is Drink Talk, where we try to solve the world's problems one drink at a time. Every other week in this podcast, we talk about the topics of today and tomorrow while highlighting and enjoying beer, spirits, and wine from around the world and also crafted locally. Join us. We are your hosts, Brian and Brett. Cheers.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hiro. That was a quick outro, wasn't it? Sorry about that.
Quick intro.
Outro. The outro of the intro. Anyway, we are joined here with Charlie Yin.
Mm-hmm. Hey, how's it going, guys?
And returning guest host, Mike.
Yeah, there we go.
We all know him, Evan.
Honored to be here again. Once again.
And this is our second time interviewing Charlie.
Yeah.
The first time I went back and looked, April.
Yeah.
And it was actually snowing out in April last year. And here in March, we're almost exactly a year later.
Yeah, I think the last time we were talking about beer.
Yes.
5168.
We just opened the tap room, the 5168 tap room.
Yeah.
So this time we're at another one of your family's restaurants, Hiro 88, out in Millard. I did want to talk a little bit about how many locations you guys have here in Omaha and in Lincoln.
With that said, we are at the location that's on 180th and Q Street.
That's correct.
So we are way out there in West Omaha.
This was our fourth location. So we have five, being Maple, which was the original, 129th Maple Street. Old Market at 13th and Jackson. That was our second location. And then we have Lincoln at 601 R Street in downtown Lincoln. Millard at 180th and Q, and then our South Lincoln location, which is actually in the same building as our brewery, is on 56th and Pine Lake in South Lincoln.
Nice. And is this the newest of the five locations?
No, actually the one on 56th and Pine Lake is the most recent.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
All right.
Just over a year.
Oh, wow.
56 and Pine Lake. I'm trying to think of where that.
Right by Campbell's Nursery.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Sure.
Nice. What I liked about, because I've been to the one on Maple Street quite a bit because we used to live right near there.
Sure.
And
I go there for my birthday every year.
Yeah, we do that. We do the boat. We do
I
the
hear
sushi
that all the
boat.
time. That's awesome.
Yep. I actually have, once we get into this, I do have a cool sake story from Hiro 88
Yeah.
there. But I like this, so it's a different feel in this restaurant than it is in the other one. Is there a reason for that? Is that purposeful that you make each location a little independent as far as the looks and atmosphere inside?
Sure, we want to differentiate ourselves. We are a family-run restaurant. We're not a chain. We don't have a blueprint as to what every single restaurant should look like. So we'll take a look at the neighborhood, take our target audience into account, of course, and kind of build around that.
Mm-hmm. Nice. I see that your target audience is people who like wine. Is that what's going on here? We're
such a cool backdrop.
We're in their party room essentially, so we can kind of be in a little bit more quieter of a space. But we have to look through a wall of wine essentially in order to see the rest of the restaurant.
Yeah. I mean, so our wine program is great. We won Wine Spectator's 1 star, which is still an honor. And we've always prided ourselves on having a great selection of wine, sake, spirits. So anytime you can build form into function to be able to showcase your product, but also, it's a wall. It gives you privacy. It's transparent. It creates this cool visual break between your party room and the main dining area.
And you're also your chef, which is your uncle, is award-winning. Your sushi is award-winning.
Yeah.
And I liked what it said on your website, that a Pan-Asian flair, which I knew separately what those words meant, but then I had to go back and look specifically what it was. And it's like all over Asia.
Yeah, it's not fusion. Fusion's when you're taking, different styles and melding them into one dish. We offer different dishes from different cultures, everything from Vietnamese.
But they're traditional to those locations.
Chinese, Japanese.
Nice, very nice. And then speaking of sake, you have one of Omaha's largest, probably Nebraska's largest at that point.
I would guess so.
Yeah, of sake, which is what we're going to be drinking on tonight. So I'm going to let you take it away on what we're drinking first.
Yeah.
And then we'll get into what sake is specifically for those non-initiated folk.
Sure. First and foremost, everything except for the first sake that we're drinking tonight is a premium sake. So premium sake is defined as basically approximately the top 10% of all sake produced in the world. A lot of what folks have had, whether it be through sake bombs or you're just out partying. That's a generic well sake. Nothing wrong with it. It's great, but definitely a different product, and usually served warm, where most of the sake that we'll be consuming tonight is going to be either slightly chilled to pretty chilled.
That is something that I found interesting about sake, and we're experiencing some technical difficulties, so please allow us just a few minutes to kind of work through some of those. Yeah. Sake has the widest temperature range for serving of any alcohol, which I found pretty fascinating. And it's from negative 10 degrees Celsius, which my conversion is somewhere on here, and I can't remember where it was specifically. But there it is, negative 10 degrees Celsius, which is 14 degrees Fahrenheit.
Sure.
Is like the coldest. And then 55 degrees Celsius, which is 131 degrees Fahrenheit, or hot sake.
Yeah, hot sake. And I'd say on the hotter side, that's more probably something that's morphed. I mean, I don't think anyone has brewed a sake that's designed to be served at that temp. But we'll get into a little bit of the history as to why sake is served at that temperature as well.
Gotcha. And so all the stuff that we're going to be drinking tonight is just room temperature?
No, one is warm. One's probably at that 130 degrees, and the rest are probably right around 40 degrees.
Okay. Fahrenheit.
Fahrenheit, yes.
Just making sure.
I can't do Celsius in my head. So.
Yeah, I know there's a conversion there, but and then the sake that we have tonight, is there a specific region that you get most of your sake from?
No, we go all over. And so the difference between sake and wine, and the difference between beer and wine, is most of the ingredients that you're using and the process is not climate dependent. Mm-hmm. Wine, you need a certain temperature to grow your grapes. You need a certain soil to be able to produce the right flavor profile on the grapes. You need the fog from the bay to give you the right environment. Just like beer, which is you have malted barley, you have yeast, you've got water, you've got hops. It's dried and it's very transportable. Sake is rice, it is yeast, it is mold and water. Yeah. I mean, so you do not get so much. You'll see specific styles in specific regions, but you won't say, oh yeah, the sake from Nagata is the best. Mm-hmm. You have good sake all over. It's more the skill of the sake maker as opposed to the region.
Well, before we get too much into, is my mic cutting in and out? It does sound like a little. Before we get too much into it, let's go ahead and start pouring some, and then we'll talk a little bit more.
Yeah, so the first sake we're drinking is the house sake that we serve at Hiro.
And is this the hot sake or the warm one?
Yes, this is the warm one.
Which is why it's in the special container.
There we go.
Now, the house sake, is there anything different about that other than it's you just buy it in bulk?
It's a non-premium sake, so I think we wanted to start with this to sort of talk about the history of why sake is served warm, and also so you can get a baseline for just very average sake, and then work our way into more refined sake.
Sure. And since we've got several to go through, I'm probably just going to be sipping on some of these.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. You can totally. We'll get a container you can dump it in. Or
yeah.
So the traditional Japanese equivalent to cheers is kanpai. Kanpai. And you'll hear people screaming that before sake bombs and banging their hands on tables.
Yeah. And this is I'm tasting like an odd lemony citrus kind of in the back a little bit. But other than that, it's kind of a flat flavor. It's a pretty subtle citrusy flavor. Usually when you serve beer super super cold, that takes away the flavor. Mm-hmm. Is it the opposite for heating up the sake?
Yeah, and that's so the history of why sake is predominantly a warm beverage is just like tequila being served cold. This is the interesting part. So as you see more and more premium product reach the U.S., both in tequila and in sake, you'll see that historically tequila's always been chilled the crap out of. Drop it on ice, shake it. Sake's been heated. So when they're brought to the U.S. and before there's really demand for premium product, you're just trying to figure out how to make the stuff bearable.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
How do I drown flavor? I don't want to enhance flavor. So with sake, you heat it up, and it basically just mutes out all the impurities. just like tequila, you chill it, you can't really taste it, and you throw some salt on, you
Salt
suck on a lime, and next thing you know, it tastes like you're drinking a margarita.
So my first experience with sake would have been with hot sake,
sure,
and dropping it into the beer. Now, sake bomb, I guess, is what they would call those. Why? Why would they do this? I mean,
it's just fun to drop shot glasses in the beer.
Yeah, like
Jaeger
Irish
car
bombs. Yeah,
just makes you feel good.
Okay.
People can't handle shots by themselves, so they have to put it in beer.
Yeah,
that's what I'm going with.
Fair enough.
No, I really, this is good. This is a good starting point.
Yeah, and as a compatible flavor, a lot of the beer from Japan is made with rice. So you have a rice-based, beverage like sake being dropped into a beer that's also made with rice. So, I mean, is it out of this world that the two are being combined? No.
Is that a more cleaner, crisper? Because I really, honestly, haven't had a lot of Asian beers. So is that
I mean, it's like Bud Light is an adjunct lager.
Okay, yeah.
Adjunct referring to another ingredient being added in, like corn, rice.
I know they use rice for clarity purposes in Anheuser-Busch.
And flavoring. It just makes it very, very
cream,
even. Crisp. So they'll do the same thing in Japan, given that a lot of those breweries were started during wars by German occupation.
So you have German occupation or British occupation, depending on what kind of beer you're having.
They're just brewing beer all over.
Exactly. All right. Well,
so this is served warm. This sake, if you did try to drink it cold, it would not taste bad. On the grand scheme of things,
it definitely smells different.
Yeah, it's got a little something to it.
I would say
it's been sitting outside in the sun too long.
I would say the aroma's actually more than the flavor profile on it. The flavor profile is pretty subtle, and the aroma's actually more distinct.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Yeah.
And the hot sakes that I'm used to, you kind of cringe after you have them.
Yeah.
This one, not too bad.
Yeah, it's bearable.
Yeah, it's bearable.
I got to be honest with you. Coming into this, we had talked at Brickway's 5-year anniversary, and the idea of doing a sake show, I was like, honestly, I don't know much beyond the big box at any restaurants. I do have one experience where my brother-in-law is a sommelier, and we are actually having dinner with the family, and he ordered a bottle of sake. I'm like,
sure.
They come what? I always thought just sake, like you just couldn't get that anywhere. You just had to go to a restaurant and get it from the box.
Where were you out of curiosity?
At Hiro 88.
Oh, you're at Hiro.
It was the one out on Maple.
I'd be amazed if someone else had sake that you could order by the bottle, and your brother would actually order. But that's very Som-like, right? They like to screw with people. It's just sake to give everyone.
Yeah, and they brought us the bottle, and I tell you what, it knocked my socks off, and not in a bad way. Like I was very surprised, subtle flavors, and then the next morning, actually, I felt fine. I did not, and we did some damage to that bottle. So that's my sake story.
This is a great segue because we're talking about sommeliers, which people usually associate with wine, although they are spirit experts, so they are expected to know sake, basic spirits, brandies, ports, as well as wine. Obviously, wine is the lion's share of what they speak about and are known for. The misconception is sake is basically wine, and you get that comparison often because of the size of the bottle. Yeah, rice wine. Size of the bottle, as well as ABV, flavor profile. You get a lot of similar profiles between white wine and sake occasionally. The difference is, so there is a process that is specifically used for sake that's not used in any other sort of alcoholic beverage. And what?
Saccharification?
No.
Okay.
I'm not sure what that is.
That's actually turning the starch to glucose, and it's a separate step. Whereas brewing, it's all done in one, and in sake, it's done in two.
Yeah.
And then fermentation is from glucose to alcohol.
Yes, glucose directly into alcohol. So it's actually, they refer to it as multiple parallel fermentation. So you have one vat where you're adding koji. Koji's the mold.
Right, yep.
In with your starches and your yeast. So the koji breaks down your starch, changes it into sugar, and the sugar is eaten by the yeast and turned into alcohol.
Yeah. So isn't there? So I saw that there was two. Oh no, that's the rice. Sorry.
Where does the koji typically come from?
Yeah. So that is the one family secret, right? Okay. Every alcohol or tequila maker's got oh, that's our family this or that. The koji or the mold that is used to make sake is what is really close guarded and secret at sake production facilities. Yeah,
a little esoteric.
And that's also the same as making soy sauce. They use the same mold in making soy sauce.
Yep.
So
Yeah. So I mean, and koji is not a magic word for mold, just used for sake. Koji just means mold.
Yep.
Sure.
Yeah.
I also heard that certain people add lactic acid, which is what your
Stomach does?
Well, no, the pain in your muscles when you work out, that's lactic acid.
Oh.
But apparently during the brewing process, you have to open the canister every now and again, which is going to bring in those wild bacteria.
Yeah.
And use the lactic acid to strip those out.
Yeah, I mean, they do it in beer as well, like lambics. It's just a wild open fooder or a large wooden fermentation vat.
Which is why, depending on where you brew,
Yeah,
is going to
it's
add
different
the
flavors.
Yep.
Well, yeah,
So
because the air and the climate.
the wild bacteria floating around.
But only wild bacteria.
Yes.
Bacteria gone wild.
Not tame bacteria.
Not tame bacteria. It's got to be really wild.
Exactly.
So, okay, so we've gone through the generic sake, and we've tasted it, and yeah, we've all had comments. It has a different musk to it. Premium sake is, the broad category is either pure rice sake, which is known as Junmai sake, or fortified sake, which is known as Hanjozo. The only difference between the two is at the very end of making pure rice sake, you will add brewer's alcohol for flavoring.
So there are ones that add, and I noticed that we talked earlier that there were, I thought, 8 different kind of categories for sake. And you said, really, there's more.
There's
than that.
more, but when it comes to production and grain, there's 6 main categories.
Yeah,
You
depending
have
on how much rice is put in there.
the size of the rice.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, so you have Junmai, which is pure rice sake, and you have Hanjozo, which is fortified sake. Both ABVs are similar, right around 13 to 16%. The alcohol that's added is strictly for flavoring. So they'll say, oh, I'd like a little bit more hints of this, and they'll add a specific alcohol to kind of bring that out. Within those categories, there are 3 categories. There's Junmai, Junmai Ginjo, and Junmai Daiginjo. And there's Hanjozo, Ginjo, and Daiginjo. Those refer to the size of rice used in the brewing process. So Junmai and Hanjozo are a 70% grain. So if you imagine a piece of rice, like blown up, if you were to peel away 30% of the exterior, that leaves you 70%.
And that's the polishing process for
Yes.
polishing the rice,
Yep.
which is what you don't just pull rice off the shelf and make sake with it.
You can. It tastes bad, but
Yeah.
well, for one, they use a completely different rice.
Right. Yeah.
Right, it's not jasmine rice that you find off the shelf.
They try to strip away the outside because that's where all the impurities are. In the center, you have the good rice for sake making. As we move up, this is a Junmai, or Hanjozo, Junmai Ginjo, and then Junmai Daiginjo. So we'll taste higher grade sake as we move up. So Ginjo and Hanjozo being 70% remaining, and then the next step being 60%, and the final step, the Daiginjos and the Junmai Daiginjos being only 50% of the rice being remaining.
Wow. So that's really cutting into the. They're leaving nothing to chance. They're going right down to the core of the rice kernel.
The other interesting thing and the impressive part is, like, as that rice gets smaller and smaller, imagine having a half grain of rice.
Yeah, which they're not big.
Yeah,
anyway.
super delicate.
Yeah.
So you see these factories moving from electronic / mechanical processes to almost 100% hand done process, because you're dealing with such a fine piece of grain. You can't send it through a conveyor belt. You can't use presses. A lot of folks using like paddles, fans, moving things manually in buckets.
What do they use to polish the rice? Is it
A mill.
Okay, but is there like a chemical reaction that they're doing, or is it all just like a
No, grinding. It's
wow.
literally polishing.
Wow.
So they're
individual kernels?
Well, no,
you got one guy with one kernel. And
they put it in the mill, change the tolerance of the size between the two plates, and that grinds it down, and they know where you hit 70, 60, and 50%.
Man, that's crazy to think about how, and it's such a small, minute little thing.
Yeah, they've
Bob,
made
2
it
more turns, you're good.
Yeah.
So we have those categories. This is a great time to get into this next sake here. So this is Cap Ace. This is a Junmai, which means that they've polished 30% away, leaving 70%.
I like the little tiny bottle.
Yeah, it's
so
a personal
cute.
bottle.
So is it? Yeah, it's a serving.
It's the equivalent of an airplane bottle for sake.
There you go. All right.
Yeah,
Kanpai.
Kanpai.
Okay, so we went from hot to cold.
Yep.
This one, the aroma and the flavor match up similarly.
Yeah. I get citrus for sure.
Yeah,
Floral notes.
It's a little sweeter.
Maybe some elderflower.
Kind of tastes like a wine. It's starting to get to like a Chardonnay.
I would say Chard, or maybe even a
not
Viognier.
Yeah. Something sweet.
I get ripe cantaloupe from this.
Oh yeah,
is-
I smell ripe cantaloupe.
I would say that it is dramatically different than the one that we just had, though.
Yes.
I think
mean,
it's
it is
less
noticeably different.
Acrid on the palate. Is that
Yes.
a fair statement?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not quite as like shocking.
It's a little fresher, crisper, like a little more.
Yeah.
Well,
I don't
and
know.
drinking alcohol hot in itself is different for me.
Yes.
Unless you're planning on drinking a hot toddy. I mean, but no, this is, noticeably different between the well or the bar sake and this is just one level up, or what would this be?
So this
equivalent
is within that. This is the bottom tier of the top 10% of sakes produced in the world.
to? Okay.
So it's a premium sake. So the definition of premium sake, some say it's like
So
8.9%.
we jumped up a lot of levels then for this one.
Yeah, we
Okay.
did.
Okay.
Yeah, but this
Which
is
is
probably
fine.
a base level of what we serve at Hiro. And the most generic being the house sake.
Right. Which you can find anywhere, right?
Yep.
Is there
Totally.
like one generic manufacturer that's supplying everybody?
Gekkeikan's huge.
Yeah.
Gekkeikan is huge. So
And that's that 5-gallon box that you get or something like that, or
5 liters.
5 liter. Okay.
5 liter box. So yeah, as we move forward, you'll see there are tons of similarities between this and wine, at least on the palate, and both in the alcohol content.
I get a little more floral notes in this one than I did the last one.
Yeah. So what are your thoughts? I mean, I've been talking for a while. What do you guys think?
No, it's great. I see. I don't know a whole lot about sake.
That's what this whole
the
episode's about.
But this is the one thing that I like beer. I like beer, and I like whiskeys and bourbons and things of that nature. But sake is still kind of a territory that I don't know yet. So I'm taking in all this information, and it's awesome.
Great. Well,
I see where the comparisons to white wine. I get the relation to white wine, at least on the palate. But it is noticeably different than most white wines. Like, I wouldn't mistake it by accident for being white wine. You know what I mean?
This doesn't have the dry
clearly
mouthfeel.
something.
Yeah.
It's clearly something different.
so perfect. I mean, you just said dry mouthfeel. There's no tannin.
No.
Right? So there's not that grape skin, and there's not the acidity of a grape either. So I think that really.
Oh, yeah,
The
the
two
ac-
things you just mentioned are what differentiate for me.
Yeah.
Which is probably why headaches with this are a lot different than
Right.
with, a wine headache, so to speak.
You do get a lot more citrus though,
Yeah.
which I really like. Like, I gotta be honest with you, I'm with Britt on this. I'm very much a layman when it comes to sake, but this was good.
Yeah.
It's kind of like having a plate full of fresh fruit.
Yeah.
But it's an alcoholic drink. But man, like you said, that kind of cantaloupe notes and like a plate of fresh fruit is what came to my mind when I drank this.
I get fresh white flowers like
Yeah.
lilacs, lilies, like blooming. This is interesting because these are both the two bottom levels of premium sake. Sorry, so you have Hanjozo and Junmai. So you'll get more of that fruit forward, melon, citrus, white flower in this level. But as we move up, it changes. I don't want to spoil it, but we can talk about what those flavors change to.
Okay.
But you'll notice as you get to that core of the rice kernel, what flavors they produce.
Which is interesting when you think about rice, because rice by itself usually doesn't have a flavor or much of a
Right,
flavor.
but it's those chemicals. I mean, it's that reaction, right? When you talk about beer, like, it doesn't taste like you're chewing on grain, but
Right.
you put grain in it, you put yeast, and you get this. You get the synergies between those ingredients, creating something
And the water that
amazing.
you use.
Yeah, the water, of course.
That's the number one ingredient in all alcohol.
Right. All right. Let's. Should we try the next one, or?
So I know you kind of talked about it. I mean, I know you kind of already mentioned this, but does the rice itself change either by region or by soil or any of that?
Yes.
Or is rice just basically rice? And then what causes that variation in flavoring as you kind of remove that in the polishing process, right? Is it the impurities on the exterior just by...
It strips off the amino acids. So basically, in standard rice, your carbohydrates, proteins, and aminos are all mixed together in even ratios. So with sake rice, they've bred it to have all the items that don't make sake taste great on the exterior. So when you mill it, you get rid of those ingredients.
Okay.
So I mean, like I was saying, jasmine rice, basmati rice. This is called sake rice, or is there a term for that?
It is rice appropriate for sake making. I mean, just think about grapes.
I have an answer for that,
Yeah.
actually.
Cool.
So there
Uh-oh.
are two types of rice that they use, kujimai and cake mai. K-A-K-E? Is that, am I pronouncing that right? Kikmai. Those are the
K-A-K-E is kake.
Kakemai.
Kakemai.
Kakemai and Kajimai.
Yep.
Are the two types of rice that they use.
Gotcha.
Not that I don't know what those two types are, honestly. Are those specifically made for sake? You don't use them for anything else other than sake?
Yeah, it's expensive rice. You wouldn't use that to serve with sesame chicken or anything, which you can get at Hiro 88.
Bingo. There's the plug.
Well done.
Yeah. Was there a happy hour special on that?
So this is the really cool thing about this next sake that we're trying. One, it's unpasteurized.
And it comes in a can.
It comes in a can.
Yeah.
So there's a whole spiel on the back, which is also the reason I believe beer is better in cans. It completely stops light pollution.
Right.
You know, it's hermetically sealed, where crown caps do leak. I mean, they've shown they leak.
That was going to be my next question. Yeah.
So this is Kikusui Funaguchi. This is, oh geez, I should know this. 19% alcohol by volume, ABV.
Is that the heaviest hitter that we're doing
This
tonight?
is the heaviest hitter.
Okay.
But in my opinion,
Glad we're doing
it's
it in
one
the
of
middle.
the smoothest. Yeah, it's one of the smoothest too.
Oh, really? Interesting.
So the pasteurization process is infamous with sake makers to destroy certain flavors in the profile of the sake. So to have an unpasteurized sake is cool. It's not something that you'll see every day. And this is actually barrel strength. So 19%.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I was going to say the most brewing, I mean, we talked a little bit before that 13 to 16%, but up to 20%, and then they usually water it down to about 15%. Is that right?
That's correct. You'll water it back down, just like most spirits, like whiskey, not
To
beer, but
40%,
whiskey.
yeah.
You'll get it actually out of the still. Your whiskey is usually 160 proof or
Yeah.
80%.
Yeah.
And then they deproof it to 120 to go into barrels. And then once you take it out of barrels, you usually deproof it once more back down to around 40% or 80 proof.
And that's just so you can sell more bottles.
That,
And the minimum is 80 proof, which is 40%.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
You want to cut it probably too, right? Like not everybody wants cask strength.
Right. Yeah.
booze.
Yeah.
Unless you have the palate for that, which is,
Or the lack of a palate for
Yeah,
that.
yeah, exactly.
It's been burned away after many years of drinking.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's what was
do
this one again?
This is the Funaguchi by Kikusui, which is,
Funaguchi.
and this is a Hanjozo, which means they add some alcohol to it to
Kanpai.
build the flavor profile. Kanpai.
Oh, completely drastically different than what we've been
Well,
drinking.
there's not much in the way of aroma. There's I'm not really getting
Yes.
very, very subtle.
Yep.
But the flavor,
It's explosive.
yes, it is.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I get more candied fruit and
Yeah. Yeah. That's what it is.
almost maybe overripe stone fruit or overripe melon.
It's almost getting to the point where it's like almost too sweet. Like it's a really sweet.
Yeah.
sake.
Candied is a good word. Yeah. I was
Yeah.
like, that's really sweet, sugary.
Are you sommelier?
I'm a level 1, which
Gotcha.
I can't actually say I'm certified som, but
Gotcha. Okay. Because there's different levels for bartenders that you'd want them to be on, like servers and all that. Anybody that deals with that.
yeah. Yep.
Is it level 2 or is it level 3? That's the certified.
So level 2 is a certified som. You can put that as a title. Level 3 is a advanced som,
Master of everything.
and level 4 is the master som.
Wow.
Yeah, the interesting thing about the master som is I think there are currently 250 in the world, and 2 are from Nebraska, which
Wow.
is not a wine region.
No.
I got my palate off of corn.
Yeah. Right. No.
you have
This
Jesse Becker and I'm gonna kick myself in the butt. I'm sorry if you're out there. I forgot your name.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Very, very cool. Local flavor for the master soms.
Yeah.
No, I'm digging this one. But for me, it's getting to that point where it's almost too sweet because
Yep.
it is. If you're a fan of sweet things like sweet wines and all this would be a really good way to go.
Desserts.
But the cool thing is no one's mentioned that it's fiery. It's not hot. It's
No,
well
it's not at all.
balanced.
Not at all.
You don't
No.
know that it's basically 20% alcohol.
No, and I'm glad we're doing small, tiny little samples of this. Do we get into the price of some of these? Is that okay?
Yeah,
So-
of course. No, that's important because it's ROI, right?
So starting with the well or the generic sake
this is about $5
for the whole canister.
for the 8-ounce carafe.
Okay,
The cap ace is
that was the next one.
the cap ace is $6 for this little bottle.
Oh wow, $1 difference, and it completely.
Well,
Wow,
this is about 3 more ounces
Oh well, still.
than the
but
cap ace, but yeah,
Still.
But it's not hot. It's cold.
it is.
And way better.
yeah.
I'll heat that up for you.
And way
Can I
better.
warm it up for you? The Funaguchi Hanjozo is $12 for this can.
Okay, so we're jumping up a little bit, but it's
Yep.
also a heavy hitter. It's 19%.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
The Kikusui. So we'll go through price as we move along as well. But
Yeah,
the
perfect.
the blue bottle. So everyone who comes into our restaurant, they don't remember the term Kikusui. They're just like, give me the blue bottle. this is the blue bottle.
I'd call it the kick-ass.
the kick-ass bottle. That is $20. And that is a Junmai Ginjo. So this is our first endeavor into that second tier, the Junmai Ginjo. Junmai, in front of that name, refers to it is a pure rice sake, which is very strictly regulated. It's like, DOCs in Europe and, tequila in Jalisco and, bourbon in the U.S. So pure rice sake can only have water, yeast, mold, and rice. That's it.
Mm-hmm. Very strict, kind of like, and I can't remember the name of it, but there's a German law that says, traditional German
for
beers.
the beers,
Yeah, four ingredients.
Reichsgebot?
Something like, yeah. No, some
David
German sounding word.
Hasselhoff? It's Hasselhoff.
Yeah.
But it's the purity laws.
Exactly.
Yeah. So malt,
40 ingredients.
yeast,
4 ingredients.
water, hops. That's it.
Not 40, 4. 4 ingredients.
Yep. So this is the first we're going to get into. It's a Junmai Ginjo, which means that 60% of the rice kernels remaining, and there's nothing added except for those 4 ingredients.
What I am noticing on here, the size comparisons here.
Yeah.
From my memory, and this has been years ago when we ordered that bottle of sake, it was actually a much larger bottle of
Like a
it
wine
Like it
bottle.
was a fifth of wine. I mean, it was a big bottle.
Yeah.
Maybe not quite a fifth, but pretty darn close.
It was a 720.
Okay.
So if you
But not
look,
a 750.
so I was going to talk about that. Do you know why they have these strange measurements? So the big bottles are 1.8 liters. They're not 2 liters. They're not 1.5s. Smaller bottles are 720s, not 750s. These are 300s, not 350s.
Or 375.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So everything in Japan, like measuring cups, or have you seen the little wooden boxes they serve sake in?
Yes.
They're called masu. And they're basically Japanese cedar. They're used for celebrations only now. They're not very practical. They make the sake taste funny. But they're also a measuring cup. So if you're in someone's kitchen in Japan, they'll use that and they'll measure rice, they'll measure flour.
Oh, wow.
So all of the
Multi-purpose.
Yeah, all the denominations of sake bottles are because they used to have a huge vat of sake and they'd take that box and just dump it in. So you don't get a 750, you get 720.
Oh,
You
okay.
don't, you don't get 2 liters, you get 1.8. But then when they finally took those measurements and applied, actual standard measurements to it, they got those numbers.
Yeah,
But
I wish I could remember
At
what the
this
name
point now, it's more of a tradition thing. Then.
It's definitely tradition.
Got
There's
it.
so
Got
much
it.
tradition steeped around alcohol in general.
Sure.
Well, and they don't they even have when you drink sake, isn't there like traditional moments like under certain trees or during certain celebrations and how
Yeah, there's different ways to pour it. So the way to use a masu now is you put a shot glass inside, and you have the box, and you always overfill the shot glass.
so it spills out into the box,
It's a
gets
sign
into the
of
wood.
prosperity. It's you're doing well enough that you can waste a little bit.
Is that like one for my homies?
Yep, pouring out one for your homies, right? When they're brewing sake, they hang that ginkgo in front of the sake distillery to show that, hey, sake is being made. There's just so, I don't know all of them. I just enjoy drinking this stuff and I can talk about it. But
Yeah.
I'd imagine there's a lot more tradition behind it.
Nice. Yeah, now, did you start with sake, or how did you get into sake? Just it came naturally in the family, or is it just?
I'd always drank sake. Previous to this life, I worked in finance in New York and always really enjoyed it. There's some amazing sushi restaurants in New York, and when I would go, I'd order a bottle. So it's nothing that I would ever shy away from. But when I kind of wrapped my head around the idea that I'm going to be running a sushi restaurant, the first
Learn
two
all you
things.
can.
Yeah, the first 2 things I did was I went out and drank a lot of sake in a thoughtful way, like with instruction guides and material. And
Drink responsibly.
That's
and I decided to actually try raw fish for the first time in my life 9 years ago.
Wow.
So those
Wow.
2 things were, well, I was raised in Nebraska in the 70s, man. You don't eat raw fish.
Yeah, right. Look at you now.
Yeah. So, it's one of my favorite foods now. But, 9 years ago when I kind of made the decision to come back to Omaha and, run with the sushi restaurants, I'm like, well, I got to eat raw fish and I got to know sake. It's a rabbit hole, just like any sort of culinary / spirit beverage education is. You just taste one thing and all of a sudden it clicks with you.
I'll tell you what, man. Coming in here, I was as much a layman as anybody else that I know, but the flavors on this stuff's fantastic.
Yeah.
I may have just entered the rabbit hole here. I'll go down this rabbit hole next time.
Yeah.
Is there a particular region, speaking of, the rabbit hole of sake, is there a particular region that's known for its sake?
No, I mean, there are certain regions that are more well-known than others. I do not have a regional preference. I mean, I have regional preferences in wine because it is so tied to the terroir. With sake, I will try everything and anything. And it's to the point I don't 30 bottles in my fridge. I don't know what they are regionally because, I mean, I think...
Is there a level, like the level that you try and stay within?
No, I always say just premium sakes, which, you can get a bottle of premium sake for $20.
$6 or 12 or 20?
Yeah, and there's 6 or 7 drinks in it. No, I mean,
depending on the size of the drink.
I try not to look at it because, I mean, if you don't want to create a bias unless it's an educational thing. I mean, what Burgundy is going to taste like, and then the different zones in Burgundy is important. But I think for sake, I just try to keep an open mind, drink it, and just really try to absorb what's happening in the bottle as opposed to trying to or regionality.
I'll jump in here really quick. Mitchell is on watching the show. The German word we were looking for was Rheinbaut.
Yeah,
Right,
I knew
we
it
were
was
so
good.
close.
Yes.
We
And
were so
David
close.
Hasselhoff, we were so close.
Yeah, yeah. And I think Mitchell.
Do I?
From Brickway.
Oh, hey,
Yeah.
what's up, Mitch?
Yeah.
Mitchell? Sorry.
Yeah, Mitchell.
It's
on
a proper.
on
it's a
Facebook,
proper
it's
name.
Mitchell.
Should we, do you want to hold this one up or should I pour it and then you can hold it?
Oh.
So this is the Kikusui. This is the blue bottle everyone asked for at Hiro.
And we are on number 4. Right. Okay.
Yep, this is number
Okay.
4. So this is a
So
Junmai.
ask for the kick-ass bottle, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the kick-ass bottle. This is Junmai Ginjo. So the rice has been milled down to 60% of its original size. It is a pure rice sake, which is what Junmai refers to.
So less than half of the size of the rice.
No, 60% remaining. So just a little bit more than half.
Okay, I thought you meant like 60%. Okay.
Just a
All right.
smidge more.
Gotcha. All right.
Yeah,
Come
come
by.
Goodbye.
So one thing I did forget to mention is, as we're talking about sweetness, as we're talking about dry sake or more creamy sake, so for me, sake is kind of fruit forward and dry or really rich and creamy, and we'll taste that as we move on. There's something called the sake metered value, or SMV, that refers to sweetness. So it goes from like negative 100 to positive 100, I believe. I can't remember for sure. Super sweet dessert sakes will be like negative 90. And the drier you get, it drifts into the positive numbers, so positive 50, positive 60.
Gotcha. Okay.
So if you're at a restaurant, which a lot of like high-end sushi restaurants in New York, Chicago, LA, San Fran, it'll list the SMV on a menu. So if you don't know the menu, it's fine. You can go by price, you can go by the name on it, so Junmai or Hanjozo, and then SMV will tell you if it's drier or sweeter.
Interesting. So, price-wise, you said this one jumped, so it was 12, and we jumped up to 20 for the bottle on this one.
So the
that's what
Kikusui is $20, but that's 300 milliliters. The Funaguchi was 200 milliliters, so you're getting about 30% more.
Okay.
33.3 repeating.
Not yet.
Nailed it.
Yeah. Very nice.
And generally, this is pretty small. You'd get, 4 or 5 shots out of it, maybe?
Yeah.
Which might be just enough for one person.
Yeah, this is a single serving.
Yeah, so
sake.
this you could potentially share with someone.
It even comes with your
Look
own
at
sake
that.
cup.
Look at
Oh,
that.
there you go.
That's
Oh
nice.
my
Is that
gosh.
regulation size? What I will say about the last one, so these two are very sweet and for me very similar in flavor, but this one tastes not as strong, probably because this one's 19%. And do we know what this one is?
I think it's 14, but I can verify that.
I'm gonna say it tastes a little more subtle on the sweetness, but the flavor profile itself is very
15.
similar. Okay.
I agree.
So yeah,
I agree with everything Brian said. This one is the flavor profile is similar, and this one is just much milder in kind of all aspects. Right?
You're fine.
It's not as alcohol forward. It's not flavor forward either. It's just milder in general, but still really good.
so there's something happening here that's going to get more extreme as we go into the next sake. Do you get a little bit of almost nuttiness or creaminess to it?
Creamy. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Yep. Creamy.
As you get into higher grades of sake, it changes the mouthfeel. There's almost like a little velvety texture towards the back of your tongue.
Which is probably what I meant with watered down.
Yeah.
Because it's a lot smoother, creamier.
The smoothness. So as you get higher in that grade, so as you get into your Junmai Daiginjos and Daiginjos, it'll get creamy. It's weird.
What do they use for filtering out? Because obviously these are crystal clear sake. Are there any like barrel aged sakes or?
This one is barrel aged.
Well, hey, all right.
Yeah, the Hanjozo.
Nice, very nice.
But they do barrel age. So the other differentiating factor between sake and wine, sake has got like at most maybe 3-4 years shelf life, and you're supposed to store them vertically. Wine should be stored horizontally because it has a cork. The Stelvin caps are not great under constant moisture.
That makes sense.
Keep your sake straight.
Yeah.
Straight up.
So what do they use for filtering these out?
I'm not sure.
Okay.
But they do filter. They
sock.
definitely do filter. A sock.
Cheesecloth.
So as a guy who's like I'm more familiar with your bourbon and scotch and those kind of processes.
Yeah.
Can you just give me the 10,000 foot on just the process of like, okay, rice out of the field, and then you do the milling polishing process, and then what, like
Steam.
Okay.
Then you steam it.
Okay.
Once it's steamed, they cool it to room temp so you don't kill the mold. I mean, in every single alcohol production process, you have to be very cognizant of temperature because yeast dies at a certain temperature, mold dies at a certain temperature. So they cool it, apply the mold, let the mold kind of cultivate onto the rice. Then they'll take the rice, put it in a vat with the yeast, with the water, and just start fermentation.
Okay.
And to me, in reading about it, is a very similar process to brewing, except for
very, very similar.
Yeah, but the process in brewing happens in one stage, where in sake there's two separate stages, and that's where we were talking about the saccharification versus the fermentation. Saccharification moving from the starch or the rice to the glucose or sugar, and then the second stage is sugar to alcohol.
And with wine, I mean, the nice thing is sugar's included in grape juice. So everything when it comes to fermentation is about getting to a sugar slurry. You know, with grapes, you got it.
Yeast loves the sugar.
Yeah, yeast loves sugar.
Yeah.
So, you know, with making beer, you have your amylase. You know, you don't have sugar in malted barley, but the malt creates amylase, and when you heat that slurry to 165, that is the sweet spot between your alpha and beta amylase, and that's what converts your carbs into sugar. So we don't have any malting of the rice. There's no amylase on it. So how do you figure that out?
Sure.
You can add amylase, but what they've done instead is just add yeast. Or sorry,
Mold.
I apologize. Add the koji, and that's that conversion factor.
Got it.
You know.
Interesting.
Yeah, the mold converts it in the first process. The yeast converts it in the second process.
There's so much that can go wrong, though.
Yeah,
Right? I mean,
Yeah.
But what's interesting is, like in brewing, like you want to keep all bacteria and all that, unless you're making, a sour beer. But in sake, you're opening that container, stirring it around every 3 or 4 hours or something like that, or
Yeah.
Yeah,
They're pretty active.
Yeah.
Well, and you know, that's probably the older style of sake making, but in this instance,
yeah, they've
a lot
probably
of it's
machined it.
mechanized. It's super mechanized at this point. So
Probably cuts down on a lot of that wild yeast, or wild bacteria, which is why they probably don't add a lot of lactic acid anymore.
yeah. So far, I mean, any favorites? So we've had the house sake, we've had the cat paste, the Funaguchi, which was the unpasteurized barrel strength, and then the Kikusui.
To me, the latest one, the Kikusui, for me, because there was just a hint of aroma. The sweetness wasn't as prevalent as it was in the previous. The 19% is nice. That's fun. But like if you're gonna be doing this by yourself, I like the 15%, just a little extra, a little less.
Yeah.
It's a little smoother.
It's a sessionable, sessionable sake.
There we go, session sake. Perfect.
Yeah.
All right.
I ditto that.
If Mitchell's
the
still watching,
creaminess of this,
yeah.
I like this.
Yeah.
the creaminess I like. This is a little bit lighter, and light creamy, whatever you want to call it. Creamy was a good word that kind of rung true for me. I really, really love the flavor profile on the unpasteurized
Yeah,
one.
same
I mean,
here.
there's just a ton of flavor.
It's one of those sakes where if you drink, like if you're a som and all you do is drink California Cabs all day and Bordeaux's and
Hard to tell the
Burgundies,
difference. You just get burnt out.
you're like, oh, that's weird. You know, the second that you get something that might be a little gamey or might have a little funk to it that's a little different, that's what that sake is for me. So for the Funaguchi, it was a complete departure from your standard sakes.
And to me, that was bordering on too sweet, whereas this one, the creaminess kind of cut through that and made it a little less than, which I like.
Yeah.
Concur. It's very sweet. It was almost syrupy, that the flavor on that, but there was just, I mean, I couldn't. There was 8 flavors hitting me all at once.
Yeah.
You know, flowers and fruit and all kinds of fun things.
Yeah.
All right, so the Kikusui is a Junmai Ginjo, which was that second tier. So you have Junmai, Junmai Ginjo, or Hanjozo Ginjo. We are moving to a Junmai Daiginjo, which is the highest tier of sake. It's probably the top 2% of sake produced in the world. 50% of that rice hull is removed, or the rice grain.
Half of the, and if you think about the rice kernel or the grain, man,
it's just a little guy.
Yeah. Wow. Is that the two types of rice that they're using?
Mm-hmm.
Is it a bigger rice kernel than normal? It's
same size.
Because I know that some like the jasmine rice I've seen is a little bit longer, and so I didn't know.
No, it's basically the same size that you're seeing when you go to a restaurant.
Huh,
so this is the Gekkeikan Horin Junmai Daiginjo. This is around $23 for this bottle, which is a little bit more, but if you're thinking about the fact that it's probably the best grade of sake that there is in the world, it's still a very, very reasonable price. So, another Japanese tradition, never pour your own sake.
Oh, sorry. Just trying to make that easier for you, and I made it
Yeah.
a little worse. Sorry. Well, this one's for your homies, right?
This one's for
No, at first glance, this is
Not
got a
colored.
lot more color to it.
It does.
Yep.
Yep.
It's a yellow or golden.
Yep.
Not in beer technology. Like a golden beer is.
Yeah.
This is more.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Kanpai.
kanpai.
Kanpai. That's right.
Did we talk about the meaning of that term, kanpai?
Not yet.
I keep thinking about it every time we say it, and then we just lose track.
that's
But yeah,
It means empty glass. So it's kind of cool because it's very Japanese and Zen. They're talking about the eventuality of what's going to happen. They're telling you to empty your glass.
interesting. Ooh, wow.
Empty your glass.
That one,
I like it.
That one, the flavor kind of hit you right up front on that one. Not as sweet, a little more dry mouthfeel to it, a little bit.
Agreed.
I'd associate the word rich, like a much more rich texture on your palate.
Yeah, my tongue feels a lot different.
I was just gonna say, I kind of feel it in the back of my tongue.
I get creaminess, and as we progress in the grades, I also get salinity, like a hint of salinity on the back.
Yeah. This is lovely though. I like it. Is there a reason for the color difference on this one?
Just not as filtered.
Yes, I mean it can be from a lot of things. This could just be a slight bit older. It might have been in process longer. Just the more rich rice concentrations in it can make it a little bit darker.
Gotcha. Is the white coating of the rice, is that more on the outer? Is that more on the inner? Or is that
More on the inner?
Okay.
Yeah. The interesting thing is if you get glasses designed for sake tasting, they'll have blue rings on the inside, and that is to help your eye visually contrast how much golden color there is in the sake.
Interesting.
And you will see a correlation between higher grade sakes and more of an amber color. Not amber, sorry, that's the wrong word. Off-white, approaching maybe a creamier.
This is still water-esque. I mean, there's not much color, but there is a little bit
subtle,
of it.
Hint of gold.
Yeah, there we go. Hint of gold.
It's kind of a ginger ale look.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, it's maybe a little like a watered down ginger ale color.
I do get some fennel from this too.
Again, the aroma's more there than others, but still pretty subtle. I like the flavor is way more prevalent than the aroma.
And for me, the interesting thing was the first time I tried this, I was expecting a very clean, crisp sake, where actually it's more rich. It's more there's more mouthfeel. I think initially, for the same reason that people tend to go towards bigger wines when they start with California Cabs. It's just a little bit easier to discern as like more of a layup when it comes to like processing it in your head. So the lighter, crisper sakes, I'm like, oh, this is easy to drink. Like I get citrus, I get a little like cantaloupe. It's drinker, not a thinker.
There's a lot going on here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
some
But
fruity
it's
flavors.
a little more difficult to kind of pull flavors out of it. I almost get like banana. I know that's that's crazy.
Banana. Yeah, that's legit. We have tasting notes here that we actually wrote. So
you
this
got the
one,
notes over there? You cheating over there?
No, this, I'm not reading off this thing.
It's on the menu, Brent.
Yeah.
The Horin. Okay, so mild fruit aroma, creamy body with hints of pear, smooth finish.
Pear, yeah, pear's a good
Little
call. That rings true for me. Like a pear juice,
Yeah.
Yeah, I get I was gonna say fruity, but pear is closer.
Yeah.
Oh, see, now I really get it when you say it.
When you say it,
then you can really pick it up.
The last category of sake that is pretty common, it's a lot of people's gateway drug into sake is nigori. There's a lot of great nigori out there. There's not a lot of great nigori available in our market. So
here locally in Nebraska, you mean?
Yeah. So we're not drinking that tonight.
Fair enough, man.
It is a super. What's available to us is a super saturated, very, very sweet, above and beyond like a ice wine sweet experience. As to what we can get. I mean, you have some amazing nigori sakes in the market in the bigger cities that they're bright, they're crisp. You get a million different flavors of stone fruit. You get slight effervescence because it's frizzante, it's a natural carbonation. We don't have access to that here. I would highly recommend if you get to those markets where you have a bigger like audience for sake, try a higher end nigori that is close to -10 or -20 on the SMV scale. The nigori we have is like at -90. So it's a sugar bomb. It's you know, it is what it is. It's good.
Dessert.
People like it. It's dessert. I mean, just kind of like this. It's a sweeter sake, but
Do most restaurants put that SMV on the?
no,
So you'd have to ask.
not here.
the server.
But in larger cities they will.
Okay.
Yeah, if you go to like a restaurant like Zuma, or you know places that cater towards high-end sushi connoisseurs, you'll see a lot of that information.
Is there food pairings that go well with sake? I mean, obviously Asian fare, but is there things that work better? And will that depend on what sake you're drinking? I'm assuming.
You know, in general, I think as a group, you have enough similarities that between the different grades, I don't think it varies too much. But anything that you would pair like a really, really nice Pinot Grigio with, Chardonnay might be a little too heavy. Like I wouldn't pair sake with a very like a white meat with heavy sauce, which I would do with a Chardonnay, like even a salmon. I think that would definitely overpower it. But raw salmon, not so much, because you don't get the salt, you don't get the oil, you don't get the garlic. Like raw fish obviously would pair great with sake. Chicken, vegetables.
So nigiri versus sushi. I mean, that's.
I would do any of that with it.
Okay.
Yeah. If you have something that's very savory, like octopus or uni, I would go towards the lower scale, like the Kikusui, because that's bright and crisp, and that acidity is going to really balance the saltiness. The higher grade sakes, I would go with light flavored fish, like tuna, striped bass.
Yellowfin.
Yeah, totally.
Huh. Nice.
Yeah.
So for the higher end, then just by itself.
Yeah, just by itself. I mean, any of this, that's what I love about sake is that, one, it's such a misunderstood spirit in our region of the country that when you get people in front of good sake, you always hear the term. Just like when I get people in front of good tequila and I actually get them to drink it warm and get them to drink it straight, you know how many times I've heard, I didn't realize tequila could taste like this.
Yeah.
Or I don't realize sake could taste like this. I mean, you hear that so often because you just fall into the same old habits of hot sake, chilled tequila, lime, salt.
Yeah.
Right. And if you don't know, you're just gonna drop it in a beer. You're just gonna order the well sake.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. But the fact that once you get the same folks in front of really good products, they enjoy it.
So for the novice, for somebody trying to jump into this, would you recommend just talking to your server and say, hey, I know nothing about sake. Could you bring me a good sake? And would they then ask you a series of questions as to what you're looking for?
Yeah. I mean, I would go as far as to say, like, I want something a little bit more dry. I want something a little bit more full-bodied. But after that, I mean, most of the servers at our restaurants at Hiro should be able to point you in a good direction.
Nice. I did notice that the only thing that we are drinking hot is the well.
Yep.
Is that on purpose?
Yeah. I mean, when you look at premium sakes, the warmest you ever want to get those is room temp. And that's cool too, because I mean, beer is pretty much meant to be served at a very consistent temperature,
just below room temperature.
Yep, just below room temp. If you're in Europe,
same
maybe
with wine.
Even room temp.
Yeah, same with wine, unless it's a white wine.
Yeah, whites you kind of get down to 45. Reds you want at 55, but there's not a lot of variance. With sake, you build your flavor profile, and then the sake maker says, like, yeah, that should be served at 50 or 30, and they can. I mean, that's one of the interesting things about sake. They're all over the place.
Yeah, which is so cool.
Yeah,
you can drink it whatever.
Sake maker's choice.
Yeah. Well, and it's a high enough alcohol content that you can almost freeze it, and depending.
No,
don't do that.
No, I know.
So
that's the old school in me.
Yeah,
keeping something in the freezer.
So we're gonna try the Zipang.
This is the final, right? This is
a what I would call dessert sake.
The big show.
It is made for the U.S. market.
It almost looks like a Sapporo bottle.
Yeah,
for beer.
It's When I drink this, I feel like a basic bro. But it's sweet. It's fortified with like artificial flavors. It is not frizzante or naturally carbonated via method de champenois or anything.
Now you said artificial flavors here, so I'm going to ask the question then.
I'm not certain it's artificial, but there are flavors added to this. I guarantee there are flavors.
So what are the rules on that for sake?
Well, they're not claiming that it's Junmai.
Okay.
Junmai is the only thing that makes it,
If it's Junmai,
pure.
then you have. But so really to make sake, as long as it's made with the 4 or 5 ingredients and falls within a certain temperature or alcohol range, then you can consider that sake.
Oh, this is Junmai. Okay, I'm wrong. I stand corrected. This does not have flavors, anything added, but it does have carbonation added. It's not naturally carbonated.
Interesting. I don't know that I would have ever thought of carbonation with sake.
Sure.
Yeah, no,
Which is why you had the pull tab.
Anytime there's yeast, there's CO2.
There
so
is,
if you
yeah.
seal that, you get natural carbonation.
And I did notice. So this is the one with the pull tab, right?
Yes.
That you had on there. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Mitch would like to know if we can get sake at local.
Right now? No. Eventually, maybe we can talk about it. Sake on tap.
There you go.
Not the well. Get an actual.
It's not made in Nebraska, man. Why are you asking me if I can get sake at local?
So okay. So where?
Fair enough.
Where? Because I mean, traditionally, when you think of sake, you think of Asian countries making sake. I mean,
Oregon.
Japan. Really? I was going to ask where in the states can we?
They make it in Oregon.
Is that the only state?
I believe that's the only one in the U.S. right
That you
now.
know
We
of,
don't
right?
carry it.
Because now are they? I'm assuming they're bringing the rice in and they're using water from Oregon.
I'm not sure. All I know is I sampled the product when I first hit our market. And
you're like,
it wasn't super impressive. Like if you want to carry something that
we don't have the tradition here.
differentiates the product that much, I'd like it to be exemplary as opposed to just kind of very middle of the road.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to pass on it for right now. And if it does get to a point that I'm happy with it, we would be happy to bring it in.
How long have they been doing that? Is that relatively new?
I think the first time I sampled it was about 4 years ago.
Oh, okay.
It's not bad, just not great.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
that's
Nothing you want to carry.
Yeah.
Probably
Yeah.
like when the United States started carrying wine, and France is like, "Oh, really?
Really?
Come by.
Come by.
Bye."
Wow.
Wow, the carbonation adds a completely different element to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I mean, you have the carbonic acid anytime that you put CO2 in a drink.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a little bit more bright.
Oh yeah.
But I'd say
Even on the
citrus for sure.
Yep.
The carbonation kind of covers a lot of the flavor.
Yeah.
You got to kind of fight through it.
It does a
But-
little bit. It takes a minute to settle in your mouth a little bit.
This and a sake mimosa, I mean, all day.
Oh yeah.
Piece of cake.
Yeah,
sure.
Sure.
They've been making superior Japanese sake since 1634.
So this is
Is
a
that
Gekkeikan
all?
product.
Okay.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, Gekkeikan's great, but Behringer still makes, White Zen.
Yeah.
This is very champagne-y.
Behringer has a very respectable line of wines. I mean, they make some of the best wine around, for sure.
I like how you said that. It's like the champagne of sake.
It is very
Really?
champagne.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and you
It's a
said
little bit of
dessert
fizz.
sake, right? So this would be a good end of night
Yeah.
nightcap, or with a sweeter dessert, and it'd be okay because the carbonation is going to cut through some of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Nice.
So this is called Zipang. It's a carbonated sake. I don't believe it's naturally carbonated. I think it's, pressurized in some sort of bright tank. CO2 added.
7%. So this is very low alcohol content
Very low
compared
alcohol.
to sake.
Yeah, it's like a beer.
Yeah. What's the cost on this one? Did we do the cost on the last one? We went with $20 on this one.
Yeah, we did. Horin is 23 for
Okay.
that bottle.
Yep.
So just a little bit more, 11%. The
Zipang.
Zipang is 14 for that bottle.
Okay.
But that's a 250 milliliter versus a 300.
Okay. You're paying for the carbonation.
Fancy bottle.
You're getting less sake because of the air bubbles.
Yeah. So, I mean, we sort of ran the gamut. I mean, we took everything from your basic, very... A sake I would actually recommend you heat, which is very rare for me,
Yeah.
to, the base level of both your fortified and pure rice sake, but the base level of what we consider premium, to that second level, which, is the Junmai Ginjo, and then the Junmai Daiginjo. As we increased, you saw, I think we all tasted a little bit more richness on the palate, or experienced richness, a little creamier. Notes went from bright and citrus to herbaceous.
Yeah, a little more mellow.
Yeah, mellow.
Earthy.
So my two favorite are probably these two here. So this, I liked the richness of this one, and I like the subtleness of this one, which is interesting because it's like two opposites, really. But yeah, those would be my two favorite. I really like those.
Man, picking favorites is hard for me. Like I mentioned before, I loved the, what was this one?
That is the Funaguchi.
Funaguchi.
So it's not unpasteurized barrel strength.
Right, but it's so bright. The flavor profile was just so bright. I mean, it was kind of fun. I loved the subtlety here. Really, you can tell that it was really high quality, and I love the richness in the flavor profile. It's a much more discerning. You kind of have to sit and think about it for a minute before you can figure out what it tastes like. All really good though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with Brian. I like the two that are standing out there.
The Horin and the Kikusui.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were great.
And I guess it depends on where you're at in the evening too, because I mean this was nice. It was a good ender, especially at 7%. That's a good one to end on.
Yeah, it's crisp. You got the carbonation. It's a little
fun. It's fun.
Palate cleanser.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm just gonna keep drinking this. You guys.
I was gonna say, is that
that.
obviously your favorite one there?
It's my favorite because just like if your job is to taste one thing every day, and you find something that kind of just throws you off kilter, it's interesting.
Yeah, pass that thing over here.
Oh, that one. Okay.
I'll take some of that.
All right.
So all this is very sessionable.
Mm-hmm.
You can drink. And this is not vodka. It's not port. It's not.
Well, and these are, you're talking 1 ounce, 1.5 ounce.
Yeah, 1.5 ounces. So, sochu, which you mentioned earlier, you said Asian vodka.
Mm-hmm.
Sochu is a Korean neutral grain spirit that's usually around 23-25%. I always sort of call it Asian vodka. For me, it's horrendous. But the only reason I'm mentioning this is I don't want to talk poorly about a specific distilled spirit. Sure. But if you're out and you mistake sochu for sake, you will not have a good time.
Oh, dear.
Yeah. Don't do that. Be aware.
That makes sense.
Because they're usually carried in the same restaurants. Like you'll get a bottle of sochu at a Korean or Japanese place because they do have Japanese sochu. But I would say if you mistake the two, you will not enjoy yourself.
Right.
Very different experiences.
Going back to naming, and we talked a little bit before the program on the word sake. Yeah. How in the United States, sake refers to one specific type of drink.
Which is another correlation with tequila.
Yeah.
In Mexico, tequila just means like liquor.
Yeah. And in Japan and China, sake just means alcoholic beverage.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
right.
what's the word for sake over in Asia? I think it's
just sake. I don't know.
I think there's probably more of a specific. I would think. You would, with all the tradition, they would have to. There is probably somewhere. And
that's probably a good question. Good follow-up, right?
And regionally, probably depends on where you're at. Japan probably has a word for it, and China has a word for it, and
Yeah, I believe it.
Yeah,
check it out.
For how about some wisdom? For people,
I love wisdom.
Yeah, for people new to sake, what would be some of your hot tips for people new to it, trying to get into it?
As you approach it, make sure just be open-minded, right?
Yeah.
If you come in having a preconception as to what it's going to taste like or how you'd like to drink it, it'll throw you off. Have an open mind if you want the sake and it's meant to be served at a certain temp, just be open to it. If you've had a lot of hot sake, try it cold.
I was actually more surprised with how fruity you can go with the sake, how getting the melon-y taste of it and all that stuff. If you're totally turned off and you're like, I don't like wine, this is actually totally different than wine, even though it's rice wine essentially.
Yeah, but that's because they didn't know where to put it.
Right.
That's fair.
I think that's they just call it rice wine because they have no. It's you brew it more than you distill it, so it's not a distilled spirit, and it's closer to. I don't know.
Is there an aging on this? You kind of brew it, and
then does not
you
age well.
Okay.
Yeah,
you don't stick it in a barrel and let it sit for.
No, you can go barrel, but it does. You don't usually age in the bottle. Like a Bordeaux, you can age for 40, 50, 60 years. A sake bottle will not last that long.
Sure. I'm going back to like the bourbon Scotch thing. You don't stick it in an oak barrel and let it sit for 10 years.
Yeah.
Before you bottle it.
Mm-hmm. Other advice is I would say that, it is a great spirit. So just go out and get some.
And that brings me to my next point. You know, I'm a big shopper of all things alcohol, but I don't really, and maybe it's just because I'm not in a section where they have sake, but where would you find
That's a good question.
Sake?
Yeah, where would you find sake?
Spirit World actually has sake.
Here
Oh,
we
really?
There you go.
Asian market on 8th
okay
or 80th
Center?
approximately in
There-
Dodge.
Oh, I thought there was there one on Center before?
I've
Or
not been there.
84 on 84th.
Yeah, around
Yeah.
84th and Dodge. They have a sake section. We do sell bottles for takeout.
Mm-hmm. So if
Packaged liquor.
we ordered
Yeah.
a bottle, so do you have different sizes or is this?
Yeah, we actually carry 720s as well.
Okay.
We used to do a lot of sakes by the craft, but we decided to pull away from that because once you open the bottle, there's a shelf life. So we've moved to the smaller bottles, and it gives folks a way to get into the premium sake without having to buy a large bottle of it.
And it's a very reasonable price.
Yeah.
Everything here was under $25.
Yeah, yeah.
I would also point out as a new guy here that there's a wide variety. So if you try one, you don't like it, don't throw in the towel on sake.
Right.
Try a couple other ones, and you'll
Yeah.
probably find one.
Right.
I mean, anytime someone tells me, I don't like beer, or I don't like white wine,
You're
or I
not
don't like
having the
red
right
wine,
ones. Yeah.
You don't want to knock them and say, well, no, you're wrong. But it's like, hey, if you just maybe try
harder.
If you don't like Chardonnay, I mean, I'm the perfect example. I don't love Chardonnay, but I love a nice crisp Sauvignon Blanc. I don't
Yeah.
love
You weren't
Malbec,
just
but I
you
really
weren't
enjoy.
you weren't trying the right white
Yeah,
wine.
yeah. So I mean, I'd say keep an open mind and try a couple of them. There's something for everyone.
Is the price point is that one where if you spend a little bit more money, obviously you're gonna be doing well, but you don't need to buy the most expensive, right? Because
No,
flavor
not at all.
profiles change so much over the different types
Yeah.
of sake that you could be perfectly happy with a $14 bottle of sake versus a $20 or $30 bottle of sake.
I think anything on this table tonight, and we've had some of the cheaper and more expensive bottles that we have. For me, it's not
But
better
still
or worse.
under $25,
Yeah.
really. I mean,
Well, these are small bottles. You get
Yeah.
into the 720 and it could be like 80, 90. It's not better or worse. It's different. And a lot of times in wine, I drink more wine just because of the amount of access we have in our state to wine
Sure.
through our distributors. It's literally a better or worse
and
scenario.
the wall of
Yeah, the
wine that
wall
we
of
have behind us here.
A lot of people say, oh, you can't tell the difference between a $30 and $100 bottle. I mean, a lot of folks that drink it all the time can. I'm more picky with wine when it comes to price. Here, it's just, am I in the mood for a lighter, more crisp experience? Am I eating something that pairs better with something that's not so rich? Or you have the heavy hitter.
The robust.
Yeah, the robust.
Every good alcohol is very situational.
Every good alcoholic or every good...
all of the above. But
Yes.
I mean, with sake, with wine, even with bourbons and scotches, bourbon is bourbon, but it's situational for me. If I'm gonna have it with a steak, that's a different deal than if I'm gonna do shots with a frat party.
Right. Yeah. If
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a mixed drink, I'd probably go with a rye whiskey.
Sure,
Versus
exactly,
if it's by itself, maybe a scotch or a bourbon, depending on what I'm in the mood for.
That's
Smoky, peaty.
You raise an interesting question here, and I'm going to throw it out there. I think I know the answer, but other than dropping sake into a beer, is it mixed really ever with anything else?
Sake, I think, does make a good martini.
Okay.
Oh,
The
interesting.
sake tini.
All right.
You can use it in place of
That
the
sounds
dry vermouth.
Sucky it to me.
I mean, if you look at some of the dry vermouths out there, it's a very similar flavor profile.
Okay.
So you could use it in place of dry vermouth. It cocktails. I mean, it's not the most prevalent.
Yeah, I was going to say, you
Because
don't
it's
see
pretty.
it a lot.
Yeah, and it's the flavor profile wouldn't cut through anything. Like if you added.
It is very delicate.
Yeah,
Which is like why vermouth is great, because that's a delicate addition to a martini.
Yeah.
But like if you put this in like a cranberry juice, I mean, I don't know that you would taste any of the sake. Don't go for an expensive sake. Go for the well.
Yeah, you'd bury it pretty fast, I think.
Yeah.
We do have a drink on the menu. I'm just gonna forgive me. I'm gonna look at our menu because I haven't looked at it. But it's called the Tokyo, so it's the equivalent of the Manhattan. So we use Dickel Rye, Koki Torino, which is a sweet vermouth, and then Taiku citrus liqueur. So Taiku is a brand of sake. They make a bunch of other stuff, but I think this is with a sochu that they infuse with citrus. So it's kind of like a watered down vodka.
Don't mistake your sochu for sake, people.
Yeah, and I was gonna say,
You'll not have a
do
good
you know what the alcohol content by chance of that liquor would be?
Around 18 to 20%.
Okay, so on the higher end of the sake.
Yeah, and then it's a sochu. So I mean, it's kind of like watered down vodka. I would say it's like weak vodka.
Yeah, which is I would say when it comes to vodka, we ended up meeting up with Pat Hoffman, who owns Lonely Oak Distillery.
Oh yeah,
Out of
we need to
Early-
get back out
yeah.
there and check them out.
And they actually handcraft their own vodka out there, which nobody makes
Really?
vodka anymore. And
Doesn't make sense, really.
well because
It
you can
tastes like
it's so-
corn.
Yeah,
It tastes like corn. It's
and I would
awesome.
say I've never said vodka was flavorful until I had his,
Yeah.
and it actually has some flavor notes to it, and I was like, wow, that's really interesting.
So we got to taste some vodka before you leave because I got a couple good bottles here.
Ooh, all right. I'm not going to say no to that.
Sold.
Is there anything else that we're kind of winding down on the sake, but is there anything that that we didn't touch on that you think the novice should know about? That I don't know.
I'd say if you love sushi, try sake.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And come to Hero 88.
And come to Hero 88, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, there's a reason that you see these flavor profiles develop. I mean, you have a very distinct flavor profile in Indian food, Chinese food, Japanese food, German food. And they, obviously alcohol is brewed just everywhere, but they try to brew it regionally to go with the cuisine.
Mhm.
Or
Ooh.
maybe vice versa even,
I did want to bring this up. So, and I wish I could remember the legislative bill that was coming through here in Nebraska that was
Beer
gonna
tax?
Yes. So that doesn't affect sake at all because it is a brewed beverage. Even though it's not brewed here, does that affect
So-
anything brought into the state?
The proposed increase in tax does affect out-of-state beer. I've never looked at it in regards to sake, but I know, one of the reasons all the distributors are actually on the same side as the craft distillers in this instance is it would affect beer being imported from AB, InBev, or Miller, or Coors all over the country. I mean, not only that, but it would make us probably, I think that we would be in the top 3 states for beer taxation in
Just
the country.
300% per gallon,
Yeah.
wasn't it?
It's insane.
300% increase
Yeah.
per
Yeah.
gallon.
It would stop the people who were wanting to start a brewery. It would stop them in their tracks, for sure.
It wouldn't even just stop people who
The,
wanted
the
it. I
new
think it might
breweries would go
put-
down. Yeah.
Put
Yeah.
some existing breweries out
Yeah.
of business.
Especially if they had if they were less than a year old and didn't really have the capital to stick around.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
actually down at Vis Major, and they were doing a big interview thing there because that's really going to affect them because they're
Yeah.
one of the newer breweries out there.
Yeah, and I mean, what I would tell to the legislators that are trying to push this forward is be long-term greedy. I mean, you're going to increase this tax 4-fold, 3-fold, whatever it is. Sure, maybe all the 50 breweries in the state will pay it for a year or two, but guess what? In 3 years, you're going to be down to 25 breweries.
Yeah.
And then you're going to say, oh, well, I just need to raise taxes again to increase my income. Where if you keep the tax reasonable and you focus on helping develop that industry
Yeah.
to where you double gallonage, then you've just doubled your tax.
Tax it on the other end, man.
Yeah, tax on the other end. And
Yeah.
for the love of God, legalize marijuana.
Tax. Well, yeah.
That's true.
Tax the crap out of
Tax
it.
it on that end.
I mean, do something other than like hurting local business.
I mean,
Yeah.
Says
Colorado. I mean, they've done that, and they've
The
said it all
surplus.
went to schools and roads, and everything's great out there.
Says
Yeah.
Charlie, who
Yes.
said, "Don't go socio-political on me."
Well, so I was
We're
with
ending
someone-
the talk on it.
We were at a Meet the Brewer today
No
at
worries.
local, so we're interviewing Colby from White Elm, and he makes amazing,
Mm-hmm.
dessert stouts and super high gravity Fluffalufgus, which is a marshmallow stout.
Oh yeah, that was good.
And I can't remember if it was him or no, it was another brewer. I apologize. I won't name him, but it was another brewer that was there, and he was part of the forum with Pete Ricketts and Tony Vargas, and they were talking about this tax, and he was saying, I just wish someone would have said, why don't you legalize at least medical marijuana? That way it's regulated. You're going to a doctor, you're getting a prescription, there's some system around it. Instead of hurting the local craft beer scene. I mean, one, Nebraska is behind the ball when it comes to where we are in the craft brewing scene. And two, we only have 4% of the beer consumed in the state is actually Nebraska craft beer. So, I mean, you're
Wow.
adding another layer of
I'm trying to help out.
Yeah, we're trying to bolster those guys for sure.
4 to 4.5 in 1 year.
Man.
I mean, we're so behind when it comes to states like Denver, Washington, California, Texas.
Well,
Just
we're
from
also new to hops too. Like Washington and Oregon, number 1, number 2 states for hops. So
Yeah.
I mean that makes sense.
But
to
we're
have-
still buying our hops from them.
we are, but that's the farmers here in Nebraska are just starting to catch on to that, and that's only been maybe in the last 3 or 4 years.
So remember when I was talking about sake, and I said sake is not something that is very regional because terroir is not important. hops, the terroir is still important. I mean, there's a reason that they're able to produce such good. I'm not saying we'll never get there, but we're not quite there yet with our climate.
Same with grapes. I mean, getting grape. We make a grape that'll survive our winters? Absolutely. Yeah, will it make good wine?
That's the tricky part.
It'll make okay wine.
But it might make
that's
great
why we
vodka.
have
it'll have a real
apple
thick
wine.
skin. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, really.
I think some of the wine in Nebraska, especially the white wine, could make an amazing vodka.
We actually, Mike and I took a road trip up to South Dakota, and we stopped by one of the oldest brewery there, the Firehouse in Rapid City.
Yep.
And they actually do wine there too, and they get their grapes from the University of Minneapolis. And I went, "You went north to get your grapes? Holy cow!"
What do they do, like an ice wine or like a super
No,
saturated
they did a bunch of other, and we sampled some of them because they have two parts, like the one's the brewery and the pub, and the other part's the winery.
Yeah.
We didn't really get much on that.
They had one dessert wine that was literally just grape juice.
Yeah.
I mean, it was
Yeah.
just sweet grape juice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's what you find up in Nebraska City. They've got the apple wines essentially from the apple orchards up there.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh,
Theirs
is this candy? What are we drinking
They
here?
had a cherry wine that was, I mean, too sweet.
Yeah.
Too
Yeah.
sweet. But
Yeah.
Even
Good
if
try.
you look at Nebraska in general, I mean, we are not large corporation friendly. You look at other states where there's huge tax incentives for companies like Amazon to build a headquarters. And do I think we need to be there? No, but our property taxes and other taxes in this state are higher than any other state. I mean,
And they keep going up.
They keep going up. They're finding new ways to tax, and I mean,
Well, they're
I
saying
understand.
this is the next. They're saying that the Midwest here, the Iowa Nebraska corridor, is going to be the next Silicon Valley, because look what's moving across the river.
Hopefully,
yeah,
if we can
that's-
attract the talent.
But that's also going to increase our property taxes that much more.
Yeah.
because people are going to be moving in.
And I understand. I mean, taxes are a part of social responsibility. You're paying for infrastructure. You're paying for education. But at the same time, let's just have an even playing field. Don't put us at a disadvantage to states like Washington, New York. We should be at
Absolutely.
a place that we can compete.
Absolutely. Did you go to the forum with Pete Ricketts?
No, I didn't.
See, I would have liked to have gone to that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And he's pro not increasing the
I
tax.
agree.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's. I think that we touched on the socio-political talk here at the end,
every
so-
time,
It
man.
should have been
Every
brought up.
time. Drink talk.
Yeah.
Solving
Drink
the world's
talk.
problems, man.
Yep.
It was after all the alcohol, though, so it's
Yeah.
loosens.
Yeah. We do appreciate. Thank you so much for hosting us.
Yeah, thank you
this
for
was
coming.
great.
Yeah, and this was
This was all your idea.
This was your idea. This
Well,
was
I'd like to think as a group.
yeah.
Where were we at? I think we were at Casual Pine.
Casual
You're like,
Pine.
I've got
Yeah.
an idea, Britt. And I'm
Let's
like,
talk
yes,
sake.
let's do
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, and then I mentioned to him again at the 5-year anniversary of Brickway,
Yeah.
and I thought it was
Awesome.
brilliant. 'Cause
I'll jump in and say, Brian and Britt, I always appreciate the invitation, the opportunity.
I'm glad you can make it
Thanks
down.
for the
Yeah.
hospitality.
It's great meeting you.
It's kind of last minute that you came in.
well, and he lives
Yeah.
right down the street, so
That's how it works.
easy for him. Yeah,
If you're gonna go across the street, like I'm in. Let's do it.
exactly.
You can stumble home, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you again, Charlie Yin, and thank you, Hiro 88, for hosting. And
Thank you.
We had a great time here. Learned a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I came into this with I've been researching for a little while because I didn't really know a whole lot about sake.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
and
thought
I'm
it was
still-
just you threw the rice in and
Yeah.
made it up, and I was like, oh, you grind it down. That's
Were you guys surprised?
yes,
very interesting,
very,
yeah.
very,
Very much,
surprised.
man.
Would you order sake again?
Absolutely.
Okay.
especially doing sushi.
I'll say this, shameless plug. This exact restaurant is my regular date night with my wife, and I will be adding sake to the regular order.
Well, now
That's
you've.
awesome.
It's nice that you've had a sample and you know which ones you can go to.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I'll
He's not going to
order
remember the names. Just bring me the bottle, and I'll choose the one that I remember.
No, I'll get the Kikusui and the what's this one? The Horin.
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 Other way around. Yeah, Horin. Those are good.
Strictly from the emotional side of the service industry, I mean those are the stories that we love. Like you said, you have your birthday every year at Hiro.
Yeah.
This is your date night. I mean, like to
Right,
become
man.
a part of someone's schedule and to be part of their schedule where they enjoy it versus schlepping to work, getting out of work,
Yeah,
grabbing
right.
the kids, going to soccer practice.
Well,
to be the sanctuary in the day to where it's like, hey, I got date night, we're good, we're relaxed. That's awesome. Thank
You
you.
know, I love this restaurant, and I'm beyond shameless plug now. I love this restaurant because if I come here with my wife, it's not so
My
crazy.
wife.
We can sit and have a conversation in this restaurant, right? It's not so loud and boisterous and
Right.
crazy where there's like,
Yeah.
crazy bachelorette party happening at the table next to you now.
Well,
You can
and
come
we-
here, you can have a nice dinner, you can eat some food,
And
order
we're in
some
the
sake.
smaller. This is technically the party room that we're in,
Yeah.
right? So,
Yep.
and even in the main area, it's still sectioned off to where you're not hearing a whole lot.
Yeah.
No, I dig it.
You guys make great sushi. That's
Thank
why
you.
we keep coming back.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
Yeah.
So the one thing that I end every Meet the Brewer with, that I'd like to end this with, is the best thing that you can do as a consumer to help the Nebraska beer scene. And we're jumping from sake to beer.
It's fine.
It's a brewed beverage.
If you go to a bar and they do not have local brews on, just tell them, like, hey, I'd love to see Cross Strain, or I'd love to see 5168, or Pint 9, or Farnham House, or Scriptown, or Brickway, or Lazy Horse. I mean, hearing from a person who's literally spending money at your bar is the best referral for that owner. And helping local business. I mean, back when I was a kid, I didn't know anyone that their dad was a brewer. I mean, you know, like maybe one person in the state that worked for, you know, maybe upstream somewhere. But now, like, you know, the brewers are around. Like, you got 50 breweries in the state.
And
every brewery probably
up.
employs 3 or 4 brewers. You know, 150, 200 brewers in the state. I mean, it's cool, like the level that we've come to with, you know, craft brewing. But
and you also with 5168.
we own 5168, but you're going to start seeing attrition if we do not, as a group and as a population, start pushing bars to carry more locally crafted beers. You go to Denver, every bar is like local. Every bar's got local beers on tap. You go to Texas, same thing. You go to San Fran, same thing. You go to Omaha, I mean, not that there's a problem with it because they make good beer, but
Unless you go to local.
Unless you come to local, it's 90% major brands and maybe 10% microbrews, one or two of which might be local.
Sure. Do you think that has a lot to do with the distributors?
I think it's more
laziness?
No, I don't think it's laziness. I think we're obviously, the Midwest is always like 3 or 4 years in general. But then I think it's also the fact that 5. You think it's 5?
Yeah, he's over there. He's just getting a gauge of what's going on.
Yeah, I think we're just behind the time a little bit, but I think, you know, we need to have an aha moment or a realization that if we as a population do not support local craft breweries, that they will not support themselves. I mean, they need a market. They need folks to, like, actually want their product on shelves, want their product on taps, and to ask for it. And they're our best salespeople. Like, if you have a beer and you like it, next time you go to a bar, like, ask the manager or the owner, say, hey, I have this great beer. Put it on tap.
There's so many great beers
here in Nebraska. Absolutely,
Oh,
and that's what I'm always looking for when I go to a place. Is I like to keep the money here. I'm like, you know, sad for saying that, but
Drink,
you know,
drink
like,
local.
And they don't have to drive a van from Colorado all up in the environment.
Right.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. All right. Well, I think that's a good note to end it on.
Yeah.
Thank you again.
Yeah,
Charlie.
thank you. I appreciate you guys coming in.
Yeah. And for this was awesome.
Yeah.
I learned a
Very
ton.
good.
I appreciate the education, man.
Yeah.
It's so great.
I'm always down to learn stuff about alcohol. I love it.
Excellent.
So, well, this has been episode 81, actually.
Yeah.
Of Drink Talk.
Getting up there.
Yeah. So, my name's Brian.
I'm Britt.
I'm Mike.
I'm Charlie.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
Have a good night.